Hello everybody, welcome back to the RFL podcast, and it is that time of year. We are now through the off-season into pre-season games, and it means we can now start talking about teams, prospects, Super Bowl contenders, rebuilding teams, all of that fun stuff to come up on today's show. But of course, we're going to be talking about the NFC and AFC as two different episodes, and joining me is Wobbegong, as always, to try and break down some of the interesting topics, discussions, and teams that we need to get our way through today. But the NFC going to be an interesting one, I think, this year. Wobbegong.
Yeah, we talked a lot about the NFC East last year, a very interesting division, but also looking at the off-season moves. I think the NFC Central could get closer together, and we of course have the champion in the NFC West, the New Orleans Saints. So let's see if a team is already strong enough this season to get back the division.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what a better opportunity to kind of dive straight in and talk a little bit about the NFC East. And, well, we did talk about this one being an interesting one last year, and boy, was it really fascinating up until the last game of the season. Obviously, we can talk a little bit about how the Cardinals, Giants, Redskins, Eagles and the Cowboys all had skin in the game until the last couple of games of the season. Dallas sort of eked them out in the end. That sort of elite talent and experience kind of paved the way forward. But, I mean, it's going to be fascinating this year. I mean, how do you see this one sort of playing out with the teams? And, I mean, they've all, in my opinion, got a lot better through the draft and free agency.
Yeah, it will be interesting since especially the Cowboys are one of the older teams. So do they still got it? Is it still enough for them to win the division? Younger players on the other teams are getting better. Really looking forward to see the Redskins after a really, really good last season. So lots of teams to get excited for. Hard to pick a division winner right now. I think we could get another NFC Beast season with basically all winning records or close to all teams with a winning record, and a very close race for the playoff seats.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's dive in and talk a little bit about a few of the teams. So I think probably we need to start with the current division champions, which is the Dallas Cowboys. They probably had the most bumpy off-season for a variety of different reasons, and we did mention a little bit in terms of the draft discussion last time that they did manage to bring in a really good player in Carl Banks, as well as a whole host of sort of depth free agency signings, I think. But I mean, still on paper, this team is still looking incredibly good. We mentioned last year a little bit about how we thought this team might be on the back end of its sort of elite contending status. They kind of proved us wrong in the end, and kind of came out and took the division in a really interesting battle. But do you see that the Cowboys have done enough to keep themselves at the top of this division this year?
My first answer would be no. I think all the off-season topics with changing owners and an aging team, and then after the draft, releasing your starting tackle because of salary cap issues, and I mean it was necessary. But when we look at the starting O-line, right now a 64 overall tackle is starting for them. Rookie Hoffman drafted in the 7th round, and I think the team is still very top heavy. They have awesome players in Dorsett, in Warren Moon, but the salary cap caught up to them, and also age. So will be interesting to see if they did enough. They will also lose cornerback Reese that they're currently actively looking to trade. So there will be a few holes, and in this division, I think it's not enough to win again. Let's see if the Cowboys prove me wrong, but I think this offseason they got younger, yes, but also worse, at least on a short-term perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of agree with you. I think this might be the season that we see Dallas drop out of the division sort of winner status for the East. Mainly, as you mentioned there, the salary cap caught up with them, as it always does with some of the top teams. If you don't sort of keep on top of it, and a whole host of reasons why that probably happened. But that leaves the 4 other teams in some really, really interesting status positions. So I think it's probably appropriate that we talk a little bit about the Cardinals first, who had a really, really good season last year. Looked like they were nailed on to sort of take the division, but sort of got snagged at the end of the year. Not a drastic off season for them. They made a couple of moves in sort of the draft day sort of status, but they also brought in just a backup tight end really, to kind of fill the role. But the team itself has kind of made status quo, which is not necessarily a bad thing when you got Peyton and Montana kind of sitting there with the likes of Scott Smith and Watts as your sort of offensive units. But Cardinals, do you think now they are the next one up, or do you still think that they maybe still need a little bit more to get them over the hump?
They will definitely be up in the running for the division title, and as you said, doing nothing in the offseason sometimes isn't too bad. And I think they did their due diligence. They had have a really good team, and just adding 1 year experience basically also to the rookies and to the young players, and also looking at the future, acquiring a future first round pick. So they set themselves up for the future, but definitely have a team that can compete, especially with the Joe Montana, Walter Payton combination on offense, but also on defense. I think they have good players. Maybe they would have needed a little bit more star power on the D line when we look at edge, for example. But yeah, they decided to stick with the team and maybe go for the title or open their winning window next season. Will be interesting to see what they do. But yeah, as you said, quiet off season. They do not have that many holes on the roster except from edge, as said. But maybe we will see a trade or something like that. Again, here, not much flexibility in terms of salary cap.
No, and I think they kind of built up that momentum through last year. So it's gonna be interesting to see them and see if they can get themselves over that hump this year. But I mean, my goodness me, this NFC East is just absolutely ludicrous. I mean, we can talk about the Giants, who, to be fair, probably by their standards, had a down year last year. 9-7, 9-7 as a down year is not necessarily that bad, but they've been really active this off season, bringing in sort of bench pieces to sort of fill the gaps. Gary Cobb was sort of the big noticeable pickup that they made in terms of the linebacker position, which I think was a really nice, tidy signing by them. But in terms of the main key pieces, they're all kind of still there. You've got likes of Lomax, Muncie, Collinsworth, and sort of and co. And the offensive line is still incredibly good. They're going to be looking, I think, to get themselves back over the St. Louis Cardinals as well. Again, guess the question to you, Wobbegong, is any reason why you can't see the Giants coming out top in this one?
I think the Giants are a wild card just because of the owner change that we had in the offseason. So first, or new owner here for the Giants. So that's always a wild card. Do they change the strategy? RFL sometimes is a little bit different to other online leagues in terms of strategy and game planning. Will be interesting to see if a little bit of time is needed before winning the games, or if the new owner is already up for it from game one. So that's the biggest wild card here, I think. But for the Giants, it's very interesting the star power that they have. You mentioned, of course, the O-line, which is incredible. Also, a great running back addition, and especially their defense with Singletary on linebacker and Long on edge. Also, they're a safe defense six. So defensive tackle is one of the best units in the league. Free safety. So I think this could be one of the better defenses in the NFC East, and maybe that's the part that differentiates the team from the others. So far, I think the Giants are definitely up for the challenge and could easily win the division, as easy as it is in the NFC East, which is basically the hardest thing to do. But yeah, they will be one of the contender teams that will fight for the division title.
Yeah, right, man. I didn't even talk about the defense, and you completely summarised it there. They have an elite defense as well. So yeah, Giants are also going to be very good this year. I mean, we're talking through the NFC East, but another team that I think is going to be pretty decent this year is going to be the Washington Redskins. Again, they've got another season in the books on there. If you move along, not a huge amount of transactions done, but they managed to pick up Theismann. I think he's going to be a very good backup quarterback for them. He was my quarterback in the Colts last year, and started before that. So he's still got something left in the tank. But another sort of development season of the likes of Kelly and Co's kind of sort of definitely take this team again that one step further. How do you feel about the Redskins going into this?
Yeah, we already talked about their first round pick, Sean Jones, 8th overall. And I think he can be a key piece on the D line that did not look that strong last season, except from defensive tackle. They have one of the best ones in the league. But edge now also looks really good. So they build up the defense. They have incredible safeties. So also one good cornerback. So the secondary is really good. And now beefing up the D-line could be the deciding factor for this division. Other than that, they look especially also good in the running game with Marcus Allen, former first overall pick. So the Redskins should add to another great offseason. And yeah, I promise that will be the last time I will talk about kickers and punters. But the Redskins have the best special teams unit in the league. So maybe this is also another factor. But yeah, I think the Redskins hope that they don't punt very much. And when we look at the offense led by Jim Kelly and Marcus Allen, I think they have enough star power to score a lot of points and also be up for the title, division title. We're saying that a lot in the division, but yeah, we're starting with the hardest one to predict. And I have no idea who will be on top. Redskins are one of the teams who have a realistic shot to win it.
Yeah, and then let's just quickly round out the NFC East before we give our sort of opinions and projections, which is going to be incredibly hard. We've definitely picked the hardest division to begin with in this podcast. But the Philadelphia Eagles, we talked a little bit about them in terms of the draft itself, and obviously their trading sort of status there. Again, they were a team that was 7-9, so they weren't necessarily a bad team last year. But, and again, looking at the team, they're probably going to be hoping for themselves to be back in the mix higher up that division, to hopefully be trying to take it themselves this year. Again, talent on the board is already there, and it's pretty obvious in likes of Ferguson and Young and co. Do you feel the Eagles have enough talent in comparison to the likes of the others to kind of get themselves back up from being bottom of this division last year?
I think they tried the most. I mean, they did not have a first round pick, but adding 2 second rounders, 2 third rounders to the team, and also being very busy in the free agency, not in terms of quantity, but mainly quality. They added 3 wide receivers, of which 2 should start, a starting center and a backup strong safety. So I think they made a lot of moves, and I think last season was maybe a little bit of an outlier. They basically won all home games and lost all away games. So if they can get a little bit more consistent, I think they could win it. But the question is, do they even want to win it? As the GM said, they're heavily looking at a quarterback prospect next year. I'm not saying that they're actively tanking, but maybe a downer season for the Eagles wouldn't be too bad when we look at their future. I think they're a little bit in a retooling stage, adding new talent for the future and getting set up there. But in this division, also it means they're still a very good team and they could easily win it. They've been a competing team for the last few years. Last season has been an exception, but yeah, we should not rely on that and say, well, the Eagles will be last in this division for sure. They still have a really, really good team, great offensive line, good running game, also former MVP quarterback. So there's still a lot of talent, but maybe they're aging a little bit. Maybe a little bit of retooling happened this offseason, and they could have another retooling season.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how they do this year. They do have a bunch of cap room, so if anything comes available, I could see them sniffing around probably to, if they are there or thereabouts at trade deadline. That'll be an interesting discussion for us to have when we get there, I think. But yeah, I mean, that brings us to the end of the NFC East overview. I had to fly through it. We could talk about these teams all day, I think, particularly in this division, given how last year played out and how these teams are looking. But yeah, I'm not gonna start. I'm gonna let you start with this one. I'm gonna take presenter privilege really and say Dallas, St. Louis, Philly, New York, Washington. Who do you see coming out on top? I think we both pretty much agree it's going to be ridiculously tight again this year in terms of who's going to win this division. But who's your betting money on this year?
I think it will be St. Louis. Although they did not do much, they've been very close last season. So I think with Dallas a little bit regressing, they could get the division. So this would be my number one team. Number two, Washington, since I liked what they did last season, so maybe they can surprise. On three, I have the Giants because I think they still have a lot of talent. And yeah, I'm trying to be a little bit bold, as you can see, with Dallas on fourth in the division, which would be a big surprise. And maybe I jinxed it. Maybe it's too early for the Cowboys downfall. But I think this could be the season. And the Eagles, fifth, as said, they could easily get the division title or second place. But yeah, based on last season, maybe a little bit, little bit biased for me, and I would put them fifth at the moment. But yeah, wouldn't be surprised if they surprise me.
Yeah, interesting. I'm going to just remind everyone, anyone who watched our episode probably 3 or 4 episodes ago, and we were talking about the playoff status last season. I called it right. I said Dallas would win the division, and they did. I just thought they had enough talent to get there. I guess the question is, do I think they still have enough talent and experience to overcome maybe some of the more material deficits that they have as a roster now? And I think probably this season, no. I would have Washington, I think, probably coming out of this division on top. I think they've got enough talent now. They've learned, they've got experience, and they to me they had an upward progressing team. So I think Washington will come out on top, and I probably would have to say I still think that Dallas are going to come in second. I think that they'll find a way. Harmon as a GM, he'll find a way to get that team to work, and I still see them coming second. So I think they'll push Washington the whole way. That being said, I think St. Louis will be a close third, and then I probably see New York, and then probably Philly rounding out the division. But I think it's going to be absolutely nuts again. I could see all of these teams going pretty much the same as last year. It's going to require a team to sort of have a really, really good win status to get there. It's going to be about who against them playing each other. But I think we could end up in a situation where, again, we have like pretty much all of the division in winning records apart from one. Is how I see the East playing out. Yeah, I mean, well, we started with the tough division. Let's dive into the Central. Which we kind of agreed last year was pretty much the Vikings plus everyone else, and it kind of did turn out that way. But I guess looking at this year, we've got some teams making some more interesting moves, trying to get themselves back into sort of that division title status. I mean, guess where do you want to start with this one in the Central Wobbegong?
So let's start with the Vikings. We talked about them a lot in the playoffs, and they had a deep playoff run. Lost to the Saints in the end after beating the Cowboys, so that was a good performance by them. And looking at the offseason, I think one improvement they made is mini camping Wade Wilson. And I won't talk about mini camps again this episode, but as far as I remember, his intelligence improved from 80 to 85. He's already been an elite quarterback, a really good percentage last season. And getting your star quarterback even better is really good. And he plays behind one of the better O-lines. 3 of the 5 best players on the Vikings are O-liners. So I think they have a really, really good foundation. When we look at the roster, they do not have any holes for the starters and also decent backups for most positions. So they're a very, very balanced team, and therefore it will be very, very tough for all the other teams in the Central to challenge them for the division title. I don't think that the Vikings got significantly worse, added a few players in free agency to, in their case, hopefully get another division title. And so far, I think there is no reason to say why they should regress this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree. The team's pretty much the status quo from last year. I think the question we'll ask about the Vikings when we get to the end of this episode will be, I think last year we talked about them as winning the division, but not necessarily being a contender. And boy, did they prove us wrong. I mean, they went 12-4, pushed everyone the whole way, really pushed the Saints as well. So yeah, I think we'll park that one and come back to it. But that leaves us with four other teams really in this division, and I think one I probably want to talk a little bit about is I think next if we jump into Tampa Bay, the Buccaneers had a sort of a difficult season last year, 6-10. They've been incredibly active this off season though. Bringing in a bunch of different players in terms of the free agency, mainly to kind of fill gaps. But they did bring in Boomer. I'm not going to say his last name because I always get it wrong. But Boomer has arrived as the quarterback position. So they do have a legitimate, star player there now who can really get this team ticking. And when you start looking at some of the rest of the roster, it's not as bad as you would appear. So they did bring in Cross in terms of the offensive line. So really paired up a really good offensive line for Boomer. Questionable in terms of is there enough talent in terms of actually receiving the ball and running the ball. We'll see how that plays out. And I'm not necessarily sitting here saying that I think they'll compete with the Vikings, but I think they have an outside chance as a wildcard slot now. There is some talent on this team. I really like some of their defensive capabilities as well. They've got some good players in there, even if they are sort of starting to age a little bit, like Gradishaw, who we mentioned obviously last year. The likes of Reese as well. A really, really good pickup for them a little while ago. So not pickup, he's been there for a while. Say that wrong. But so I kind of feel like this team is in an upward trajectory and probably one of the teams out of the Central that could compete for a wild card slot this year.
Yeah, they're a very interesting team. As you said, maybe the foundation of the Buccaneers is the defense with star power there and also good foundation. Maybe they need a little bit more star power on cornerback, but looking at edge, defensive tackle, linebacker, safeties, I think all those positions are really, really good. And on the offensive side, you have an incredibly good offensive line. You added Boomer Esiason in the draft, who should be a really interesting quarterback for next season. But yeah, as you said, maybe their biggest weakness right now are the playmakers. They have quantity on wide receiver and running back, but no star. Their best wide receiver is 77 overall, best running back 79 overall. And I know overall isn't everything, but it shows a little bit that, maybe they could use some more star playmakers. Will be interesting to see what their rookie Kevin Mack that they added in the third round could do. He's already one of the better running backs. Not sure if this is already enough to challenge the Vikings, but it's one of the more exciting teams as we talked about them throughout the draft. They had interesting picks and should be a team that can surprise any other team in the division. Could also be a team that in the end has a 50% record or something like that. Hard to tell, but they made some interesting offseason moves.
Yeah, I kind of agree. They'll either be just below 0.500 or around it, I think. I don't necessarily see them being a team that's going to go, win 9-10 games. I think they'll probably be around that 8 to sort of 5 range probably, but one that I could see having such a wide range in terms of variance there. But I guess the only other team that really, personally, I don't know what you think, I could see competing with the Vikings and giving them at least a run for their money is the Detroit Lions. So we talked a little bit about them last year. They end up 6-10, which is probably one of the worst records I've seen the Lions in the RFL kind of have under Stewart. They just had such a bad start last season. I can't remember off the top of my head. Let me just double check. I think they lost their opening games. I think they lost sort of 4 of their opening 5 games of the season last year, which kind of put them on the massive backward footing. And then they lost their last 3 games of the season. So that kind of adds up over, in terms of making their position where they were. And in terms of the off season, I think it's not necessarily been one where I can go, they've had a fantastic off season. They've brought all this talent in. I just think another year of Herbert and another, and if they don't get an unlucky run of games where they lose, and quite close, some of those are quite close, they'll be closer to the Vikings. And I'm not necessarily sitting here suggesting that they will overtake them. I think they'll probably me, I have them down as a second place in terms of the Central. But I just thought they were a little bit unlucky last year. And from historic status, talent on this roster, I could kind of see them getting back up in terms of that win record.
Yeah, for me personally, right now, I would say maybe the Buccaneers surprise and get the second place. But yeah, Lions are definitely up for it, and hopefully for them get a place in the playoffs. I lied earlier. I will talk about another mini camp again. Bobby Herbert got an improvement for his arm, so a little bit of training here in the off season. The offensive rookie of the year from last season. So maybe we get a really, really good improvement for him in the second year. That will be a little bit of the wild card if he performs similar to last season or gets better. I think they have a real shot. I liked that they added a few running backs in free agency to have at least some rotational players there and figure out who their starter could be for the next 1 to 2 years. And yeah, other than that, they have a few playmakers, one of the better tight ends in the division, and at least one star on wide receiver. But yeah, compared to the Buccaneers, maybe not that much star power on defense. They're pretty deep in some positions. I think on edge, they're better with two really good edge players for the Lions. But other than that, if we have the direct comparison between the Lions and Buccaneers, I think Lions could have the advantage on offense, Buccaneers a little bit on defense. And the offseason strategy for the Lions seemed to be to fill the holes, a lot of draft picks on linebacker. So 3 linebackers picked in within the first 4 picks in round 1 or 2, and also adding, as I said, some running backs in the free agency. So they try to best to get different players in, and hopefully for them, 1 or 2 can develop into quality starters and help them to be one of the best teams in the Central, maybe the second best, or maybe challenge the Vikings for number 1.
Yes, that kind of leaves us with 2 teams left to discuss. I mean, I think probably, I mean, we talk about the Bears quickly, but I think it'd be fair to say they are probably already got one eye forward in terms of 85. The rosters, still got some okay talent, but I mean, the quarterback situation is very questionable going into this year. So I think it's fair to say, unless you have anything massively you want to sort of share about the Bears and where you think they are, I think they will probably end up being bottom of the Central, and they're going through that rebuilding sort of phase now.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, they had 17 draft picks, if I remember correctly, and also added 13 players via free agency. So totally different team that is definitely in a rebuilding phase. We talked about a lot of the Bears in the offseason. So not much to add here. As said, rebuilding year for them. And I think they will look at next year's draft, especially also with their draft picks, and adding a quarterback and more talent within the next few seasons, which is fine. I like rebuilding years if you really want to rebuild and push the restart button. And I think that's what the Bears did this offseason. So yeah, let's see what they will do in the next few years. But I don't think that they will win too many games next season.
No, I think they're going to be through that rebuilding phase. So that brings us to the final team in the Central Division, which is the Green Bay Packers, which I've left them last deliberately because they are the enigma team, I think, of the Central Division now. I look at this team on paper and I would say probably could be making progression upwards. I mean, the team won a grand total of just 5 games last year, and I look at this team and I go, it's probably not a 5-win team anymore. But boy, is the pressure on them now. They don't have any first round picks going into next year, so there is no reason for them to be looking at next year's draft already, like the Bears. But I don't know whether they necessarily got enough to get past the Lions and Tampa Bay. And I certainly don't think they've got enough to get past the Vikings this year. But Mahomes is still developing. He's still an unbelievably phenomenal quarterback. So they do have some key positions already filled with some good talent, and I really don't know how this team is going to perform this year. This is the question mark team I have in the Central Division. What do you think?
think they have some quality starters and some positions they do not need to worry about in the future. I like the quarterback situation, of course. They also have in Kurt Warner a really interesting second-year running back. On wide receiver, not so good. So I think this is a really good example that for some positions, like quarterback, running back, guard, for example, they have really talent, and for others, they still need to add some players. So I think they're somewhere in between. I think they will be behind the Lions, Buccaneers, and Vikings, but maybe in front of the Bears. As you said, there is no reason for them to tank. They will try to compete and have some players to do that. But yeah, maybe they're still 1 or 2 years away from filling all their holes, getting starting talent in for every position. So right now, I agree, maybe not yet where they want to be, but could be a little bit of an improvement compared to last season, especially with players developing, young players on the O-line, for example. And on quarterback, McMahon can improve a lot. So wild card for sure, but I agree, playoffs is maybe a step beyond their expectations right now.
Yeah. So I mean, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're pretty much agreed with the Central, which is we think the Vikings are certainly going to win the division. I mean, I think you probably. I think we. To be fair, I think we probably both have Detroit and Tampa in that sort of second and third slot. I think you have Tampa.
Yeah.
I've got Detroit. Then we have Green Bay and Chicago. So probably one of the easier ones for us to kind of agree on with this one. So we started with the hardest division. We've gone to the Central, which we've kind of more or less agreed on, which brings us to the West, which obviously has the current RFL champions, New Orleans Saints. But let's park them and talk about the other three teams. I guess first one I want to dive into probably is going to be Atlanta. You know, interesting off season again. Brought in a couple of different players and personnel to kind of fill the spots. But you know, in terms of where they are, they obviously had that phenomenal draft where they brought Zimmerman in at pick 5, where we talked about him on the last episode. The team itself last year was a 5-11 team. I don't think we're both sitting here with necessarily saying that they are going to be contending with the Saints this year. But do you think they are going to win more than 5 games this year?
Yeah, for sure. I think they improved, and they had one of the best drafts that we talked about, and Gary Zimmerman for the tackle position and Louis Lips for the wide receiver position. So 2 stars already. And I think they should give the offense a really good baseline for Jaworski or however this quarterback is pronounced to play better. I think they need to worry about the quarterback position within the next 2 or 3 years. He's on a 1-year contract, 33 years old, but nothing to worry about this season. I think the offense is really set up to be way better than 5 games. Defense, also solid foundation, maybe not the stars, but for most of the position, really solid players in the 70s and 80s. I think they could win 9 games, maybe, and maybe be the second team in the division. We will talk about the other teams as well, and I think hard to predict this division. But the Falcons could be one of the teams with the biggest improvements compared to last season.
Yeah, and I think the other team that we need to talk about in terms of possibly in the standings, you know, being there or thereabouts, was the Los Angeles Rams. They won 9 games last year. Again, you know, looking in terms of the roster build, they're slowly making good progression there. They obviously did have the hit of the retirement, which probably hit them as hard as anyone did, because the likes of, trying to get his name now. Bear with me 1 second. I will get his name. It was. Oh, lost it now. Anyway, I can't remember who the Rams quarterback was retired now. Let me see if I can grab it. I've lost it. No, but anyway. Oh no, he's still there. Pastorini's still there. Oh no, Pastrini's not there. Hang on, bear with me 1 second. Apologies, viewers.
So
I just
maybe
need to.
they lost
No, he's
him
not.
in
He's gone.
free
He's gone.
agency, could be. But
Yeah, I think he was free agency lost. Sorry, not retirement lost. Yeah, no. So they've lost at the quarterback position. So the team was 9-7 last year. If they still would have had him, I'd have probably said that they will be closer to the Saints than they were maybe last year, just given the additional sort of talent they've added. But I kind of see them now in this weird status where they are probably going to be competing with the Falcons for that second slot.
yeah, I think especially with the talent they have, it will be tough to challenge the Saints. They added Jay Schroeder in the first round, and I think he could be a decent starting quarterback. And will be interesting to see what he can do in his rookie season. But yeah, when you have Earl Campbell as a running back on the team and overall, yeah, decent talent. Again, maybe we're talking a little bit about other playmakers outside of Campbell. They have Wesley Walker on wide receiver, but other than that, maybe a few more additions needed. And on the defensive side, they have some stars on linebacker, on edge, on cornerback. So right now, I would agree the Rams are the second best team in the division, whereas the Falcons are maybe on the rise. The Rams need to take a look at their current roster and seeing what they still can get of some aging players if they can develop the young talent. I think they should have the highest odds to be second in this division, but all depends on the performance of rookie Jay Schroeder, which is a little bit of a wild card as a rookie. But yeah, when we look at the roster, no positions with big holes. Every position has decent starters and backups. So the Rams have a solid foundation to challenge the playoff seats, but not challenge the Saints as the division champion.
Yeah, I think in terms of where they are, they're probably going to make a downward step, and I think their loss is going to probably be the Falcons game this year. So I kind of agree with you. I kind of probably see that Falcons in that second slot, probably Los Angeles in that third slot. And then that brings us to San Francisco, who we haven't talked about yet. I still think they are going to be in that fourth slot this year. If we go back to previous years, they managed to win six games last year, end up third in division. I think more due to sort of the Falcons kind of necessarily having that downward year. But I kind of see them slotting in there. They have sort of got Hipple, who's a bit of a interesting sort of quarterback. We talked a lot about him last off season. But I still kind of see this team. It's not made enough additions to kind of get themselves back up with the Falcons and Los Angeles for sort of competing in that sort of mid tier of this division. But I mean, how do you see that, Wobbegong? Do you think that's going to play out? Do you think the 49ers are going to be at the bottom, or do you see them kind of being closer to that sort of that mid pack of this division?
Yeah, I think maybe they win 1 or 2 games more compared to last season. But right now, I would agree that they're maybe fourth in the division. I think the star power is a little bit lacking here. Of course, we're talking about Otis Anderson, the best player on the team. It's a running back, and also 2 key pieces on defense with Lee, with Merriweather on cornerback and linebacker, and a really good foundation on the O-line. So I think that's one of their strengths, O-line for sure. But other than that, one playmaker in second year, Henry Ellard, and they tried to fix the holes. They had 4 second-round picks where they drafted edge, tight end, guard, linebackers, but yeah, no stars, but I think solid starters. And they're doing a really good job on building a foundation. So for them, it would be maybe adding a few stars over the next few seasons and really figuring out the quarterback position. And then I think they have a really good foundation to get there where the Rams currently are. But I think there's still a few steps away. And Eric Hipple, their quarterback, played 10 games last season, only 2,000 yards, 18 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So this will be the make and break year for him. And I think that's kind of the best case scenario for the 49ers, using this year as a retooling year and figuring out if Eric Hipple is their star quarterback. And if not, I expect them to pick top 10 maybe, and maybe getting a new quarterback next season. And then we're talking about a team on the rise. But so far, I think some players have to prove something this season. Solid foundation, but yeah, maybe not enough star power to challenge the other teams for the second place in the division.
Yeah, I think so. So, I mean, we haven't talked about the Saints. We've kind of skirted around and talked about the other guys in the division, but I mean, Super Bowl champions, pretty much brought everyone back, and managed to add some depth pieces to kind of fill out the roster. Anything else we really want to say about the Saints other than they are a very good team? They are the champions. We kind of expect them to take the West. I don't necessarily see them being challenged again this year.
Oh no, yeah, I fully agree. They even got better, which is a scary thing to say for the current Super Bowl champion. But yeah, we talked about my favorite pick in Jim Sweeney, the now guard, former center in the first round, who's incredible. They also traded for Marty Lyons, who's currently on holdout. But if they can figure out this situation, he will be a star on edge and in free agency. They did not add too many players, but one of the key pieces was Ken Lanier, or actually they added a few players, but I especially wanted to mention Ken Lanier, the tackle, which really sums up this O-line, which is decent enough to block for their quarterback in Steve Fuller. So yeah, no question marks about this team. They got better. They have a really, really good roster, star power, and this would be the biggest surprise in all of the divisions if the Saints don't win it. So from all the divisions, I think the Saints should be the clearest favorite to win it, not because the other teams are bad or anything, but because the current Super Bowl champion just got significantly better this offseason.
Yeah, I think so. I agree. So pretty much we both in the same position on this one again. I think the Saints are going to come out on top in the West. We then probably see the Falcons in the second slot, followed by Los Angeles, followed by the 49ers. And yeah, that brings us to kind of the end of the division look of the NFC. But we thought we'd always sort of take a little bit of a recap at the end of this episode and just give our views in terms of who do we think are kind of the top tier teams in the NFC, and our sort of very quick reasons why for that. But I guess what we've got, unless you disagree with me, I kind of see New Orleans being at the tier one on its own. Given they are the Super Bowl champions, they've got huge amounts of talent. Nothing to suggest that they are going to sort of be dropping down out of the tier. And I kind of see this second tier, which is Minnesota, Washington, St. Louis, Dallas, probably in that second tier. And then I kind of see everything else kind of in the third and fourth tiers, really, depending on whether they're rebuilding or in that sort of mid-pack wildcard kind of slot. Is there anyone else you see that I haven't mentioned that should be in that sort of top end of this NFC?
Oh, I agree. Also with Saints in their own tier, I think it's fair to put the current Super Bowl champion there. Maybe the Vikings are kind of the 1B team, especially how they performed in the playoffs last season. I think it would be unfair to them to totally write them off. And I think in a playoff matchup against the Saints, they have a real shot of getting their revenge. NFC East, as we said earlier, no way to predict that. For me, I think, as said, the Cardinals might be the favorites here to be in one tier with the Vikings. And the rest, I agree with you. We already talked about some retooling teams and some teams that have an outside chance to make the playoffs. Right now, I would bet on the Saints and Vikings as the clear division champions and Cardinals, as said, on the East. And right now, I think the two wildcard teams could come from the NFC East. That would be my bet right now. But I wouldn't be surprised if we get a Lions, Buccaneers, Falcons, or Rams instead of the second NFC East team. But yeah, I think at least two teams out of the NFC East should make the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's how I see the tiers playing out. And a 1B for the Vikings is probably fair, given we mentioned that we were going to talk a little bit about them, and I kind of see them on any given day if they have a fantastic game and the Saints are not necessarily at that top of their capability that I could see the Vikings knocking them off. And that's not to say this. I don't think the Saints are just that far ahead. Vikings are a very good team as well. But yeah, that brings us to a close of the NFC preview. We'll of course follow the NFC as we go along through the season and bring you the stories, the news, the lowdown of kind of how this plays out. That is of course our opinions and views before the season started. I don't know about you, Wobbegong. I'm going to be watching that NFC East like a hawk every single sim this year because it was so fun to watch last year as a neutral. I'm so excited to see how that one plays out. But any final thoughts and reflections on the NFC before we close out this episode?
I agree. The NFC Beast should be one of the most interesting divisions. As always, it will be interesting to see what teams will surprise next season, either because of their improvement compared to last season, or maybe teams that take a step back. Really interesting to follow the NFC. And as always, it was fun to talk about the teams. Now the season starts, and I'm pretty sure some of our takes look pretty bad in a few weeks.